Welcome to Astronomy in Reverse by Pansley. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoy and subscribe for future episodes. Please check the description for a full list of tags and the link to drop a kudos for the original author. With that out of the way, let's continue. Chapter 22, End of the World. The house is quiet like it's been empty for years. Tony had appeared briefly to inquire what all the commotion had been about, but Steve was quick to divert his attention. Bucky isn't sure where either of them has disappeared to now. He figures that, in a rare moment of situational awareness, Steve realized that this is something Bucky needs to handle on his own, and made himself and Tony scarce to make it as easy as possible. Not that there's anything that can make this easy. His head is still pounding. He's been waiting for hours, hopping against hope that Peter will cool down on his own and come out to find him, but the boy seems to have adopted his dad's method of handling grief, running away and hiding, and hasn't been seen or heard from since he stormed off several hours ago. He had been so angry. Angry and hurt. Bucky stares down at his hands, wishing he could trade every ounce of his superhuman strength for the power to make this all better. He hadn't wanted Peter to find out this way. He didn't even get a chance to think about how to tell the kid, never mind when or where. And Peter had turned and run before Bucky could even think of what to say to smooth it over. He's leaving for Wakanda. And Peter isn't coming with him. Bucky sighs and leans back, head tipped against the back of the couch, staring up at the ceiling. At the new drywall and fresh paint, still pristine from Tony's recent upgrades to his AI. It reminds him all over again of the small repairs he and Peter had made to their apartment in Queens, all those long months ago, and his heart catches in his throat. He has failed Peter so many times since the day they met. Over and over, every day that he didn't realize the kid was starving himself, he failed him. He failed him by taking him in when he knew better. He failed him with every breath they shared in each other's presence, knowing that one day the skeletons would emerge from his closet. He failed him by letting him get shot. And he's failing him now. Tears prick at his eyes, but Bucky clenches his jaw and wills them away. Let it be the last time, he thinks, prays. Let this be the last time I have to fail him. He knows it's the worst thing, breaking the one promise Peter needed him to keep above all others, breaking the boy's heart in the worst way either of them could imagine. But he has to, if he doesn't want to fail Peter anymore. And he doesn't. With a deep breath, Bucky pushes himself off the couch and heads down the hall, where Peter's bedroom door remains as firmly shut as it's been for hours. Pete, he calls, rapping his knuckles against the door. There's no answer. Peter, Bucky tries again, knocking a little firmer. You gonna come out and talk to me? The boy doesn't respond. If possible, Bucky's heart sinks even further. Come on, we need to talk and you need to eat something. You wanna come help me get dinner started? The silence on the other side of the door is deafening. Bucky swallows down a hurt sigh. You wanna make some noise and let me know you're okay, so I don't have to break the door down. Nothing. Then after a moment, the door rattles with a distinct, angry thud, like something was flippantly thrown against it. Bucky does sigh this time, disappointed and unable to help it. Thanks, kiddo, he says, giving the door a single farewell tap before he turns and leaves. When Steve resurfaces from wherever he'd been hiding, his handsome face is damp with sympathy. He wordlessly wraps an arm around Bucky's shoulders, holding him tight, and it's startling how comforting the small gesture is. Bucky ducks his head and presses it against the other man's neck. I hate this, Steve. I know. What am I supposed to do? He won't even speak to me. Just give him time. Steve kisses the crown of his head, moving his arm to pull Bucky into a proper hug. He needs time to himself just like you did, Buck, to come to terms with everything and process it, and be upset if he needs to. It doesn't mean you love each other any less. You guys just need some space right now. We're about to have nothing but space, Bucky says. The implication brings a fresh wave of panic, anxiety rippling through him. He needs to know why I'm doing this before I just up and abandon him. He can feel Steve frown against his cheek. You aren't abandoning him. Bucky's fists clench around the back of Steve's shirt. It'll feel like I am. He'll have support, Steve promises. He's a smart kid, Buck, don't sell him short. He may be upset, but ultimately he'll understand you're doing what you need to do and he'll forgive you. And until he gets to that point, he'll have all the help and care he needs. This is the right thing. Is it? They both startle at the sound of Tony's voice, standing at the opposite end of the room, arms crossed over his chest. It's a pose that should look casually disapproving, but something in Tony's posture seems entirely defensive, self-protecting, far from the invincible, intimidating stature that Iron Man usually has. Tony raises an eyebrow at the two of them when neither responds. I'm not convinced that this isn't just adding salt on a very fresh wound, he says. Barnes, that kid has abandonment issues up to his ears. He just got you back after that psycho Zemo kidnapped you to Siberia. You've spent 98% of that time since you got back hiding away in your bedroom, hardly speaking to or even looking in his direction. Now you're going to get on a plane and fly to Africa for God knows how long. And do the one thing you swore you were never going to do. You don't strike me as cruel, but I can't think of any other word for it. He can't help but flinch. Steve's face hardens like granite and he snaps, Tony, back off. I'm not going to stop you, Tony says, not backing off in the slightest, but I think you should know, you're about to put that kid through hell again. I don't know what else to do. He shrugs out of Steve's arms, pulling away from both men and running his metal hand through his hair. T'Challa's right. If I don't go through with this, I don't have a chance in hell of winning my trial. If I lose my trial, we'll be separated when I get locked up or executed. If I don't go through with the trial at all, then either Peter and I have to stay in this house for the rest of our lives, or we separate anyway so he can have some semblance of a normal life. That's all I get. Those are the only options I see. But if you see something else, Tony, if you've got some genius secret plan, hell, I'm begging you, please tell me. Tony only holds himself more protectively, and the ember, the tiny shimmer of hope Bucky still felt flickering in his chest, is promptly snuffed out. Helplessness hangs heavily over all of them like a thick, cloying sheet. The moment is broken when Tony makes a loud, frustrated sound somewhere between a sigh and a groan and snaps. What's so good about a normal life anyway? I'm a billionaire, T'Challa's a billionaire. Between the two of us, we could set you guys up on a secluded tropical island somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, where you could sit around getting tanned and fat and chased by coconut crabs for the rest of your lives. We could figure it out. It would work. It could be a good life. In spite of himself, Bucky smiles, the mirror opposite expression of the desperate hopelessness on Tony's face. It could, he agrees softly, but that's not what I want, Tony, not for Peter and not for myself. Tony almost looks pleading as he says, I'm not going to bullshit you and say I have all the answers when I don't. I don't know what the other option is. What I do know is that Peter won't be able to handle being left alone. He's not there yet. His voice nearly breaks. He doesn't strike Bucky as the sort of man who's used to begging for anything, but his next words come almost naturally to him. Don't do this, Bucky, not to that kid. I know I said you two have some serious space issues, but running off and leaving him alone is not the answer. Something dawns on Bucky then. A wordless feeling, a vague confidence he isn't sure how to name. He steps close to Tony, meeting the man's panicked brown eyes with what he hopes is a calm expression, feeling that same calmness wash over him, smothering the anxiety. He lays his hand on Tony's shoulder, near his neck, holds him firm and says, I'm not leaving him alone. Tony's gaze searches his, then flicks over to Steve. Don't take this the wrong way, but I think Cap, going to be a bit too much of a nervous wreck to properly play daddy daycare while you're gone. I wasn't talking about Steve, Bucky says. I was talking about you. Me, Tony says aghast, like no one has ever acknowledged him before in his life. You what? I'm not leaving Peter alone, Tony. I'm leaving him with you. You troglodyte, the man seethes. Cut the bullshit. That is so much worse. He doesn't know how, but despite everything, he finds himself laughing at the stunned, outraged look on the other man's face. I'm serious, Tony hisses. Barnes, this isn't funny. Peter isn't going to be placated by playing Weekend at Bernie's at my penthouse. It won't lessen the sting of what this will do to him. That won't, Bucky says, agreeing, but you will, Tony. The man opens his mouth to argue again, but Bucky takes him by the arms, reassuring, I know that this is going to hurt like hell. You're right, it is, but Steve's right too. Peter isn't going to be alone. It'll be hard, but he's going to be okay. Tony's voice is whisper quiet. How do you know? Bucky smiles and says, because he'll be with you. He pats the man's shoulder, firm, comforting and final, with someone who loves him as much as I do. It takes a little coaxing from Steve, but Bucky manages not to break down Peter's door when the boy shows no sign of coming out of his room that night. Steve isn't offended when Bucky declines his invitation to sleep together in his room. He doesn't doubt the physical contact would be comforting, but he'd rather stay as close to his kid as possible, even if Peter's still refusing to talk to him. He wants the boy to know he's nearby and accessible should he wish to talk, and Steve, knowing his presence might hinder that somewhat, graciously retires to his own room to sleep. Bucky never been more aware of how much he doesn't deserve him. After all, Steve is losing him too. He can't come with Bucky for exactly the same reasons that Peter can't. The reasons they still need to talk about if only Peter would come out or let him in. If only he would give Bucky the chance to explain, to comfort him, to try and make it better, futile as it may be. He stares up at the darkened ceiling of his borrowed bedroom and ignores the voice whispering, insidious, "You deserve this." After all, this is exactly how Peter must have felt. The last few days, lying awake at night and wishing Bucky would just talk to him, would let him in instead of pushing him away. Even if Steve is right, and both of them are justified in needing their personal space, this feeling is near unbearable. The loneliness of it throttles him. "Friday," he quietly calls. "Is Peter asleep?" The AI almost seems to hesitate. "No, Bucky." He's out of bed and out the door without a second thought. The boy still doesn't respond or make a sound when Bucky knocks, not even when he says, "Peter, I know you're awake." But that's all right. Taking a deep breath, Bucky turns and presses his back to the boy's door, gently sliding down until he's sitting in the dark, empty hallway. Not a single sound comes from inside the room. Bucky rests the back of his skull against the door and says, "Peter, you don't have to come out or let me in or even talk to me. I won't force you to talk about it if you're not ready. I get it. There's something I need to say to you." He inhales slowly, hoards the breath possessively in his lungs. "I was scared to look at you after you got shot." He swallows the lump in his throat. He didn't want to talk about this. He still doesn't. But Peter deserves to know why Bucky pushed him away, the same way he deserves to know why he's leaving. Why he's breaking his promise. "I was scared of remembering what that moment felt like. I was scared of remembering how it felt to have you die in my arms. I thought, when I woke up in Siberia, I just kept thinking to myself, he's gone. He's gone, and I'm not a dad anymore. No one will ever call me that again." Tears well up in his eyes, but Bucky doesn't will them away this time. "But then you were there, just like the night we met. Suddenly, out of nowhere, there you were, and it felt like I had been given a second chance. Like this identity I'm so irrationally, possessively fond of wasn't being ripped away from me after all. You were alive and I could still be your dad. It was like the universe was telling me, do it again, but do it right this time. I felt like we could, like I could start over, that I could still somehow find a way to do right by you." He laughs, but it sounds more like a sob, and for a moment Bucky can't be sure that it is. "But then we got home. We got home and I started to give Steve and Tony hell for letting you come along in the shape you were in. But Tony made me realize that of the three of us, I'm the one who's hurt you the most. The one who's been hurting you since day one." Peter doesn't say anything, but there's a shift, a creak, the muted tapping of bare feet on the hardwood floor. Bucky waits to see if the door will open, but the room is silent once again. "Peter, how could you starve yourself just to stay with me? How could you do that?" He waits, holding his breath. He had been so afraid to ask, though he knows the answer. He knows Tony is right. He knows Peter most likely didn't even mean to do it. And he knows, more than that it's his own fault that he didn't see. He starts hesitant, afraid to say the wrong thing when things are already so broken. "I had thought the universe was giving me a second chance. But at that moment when Tony pulled the blinders off, God, Peter, cry freeze wasn't as cold as I felt. I wasn't a grieving man being given a second chance to be your dad. I was a fool who was being forced to realize how delusional I had been. I'm not your dad, and I never was. I'm the Winter Soldier, and I had no idea what the fuck I was doing, and you're the one who suffered for it." His metal hand feels cool against his heated face. He doesn't bother wiping the tears away. It was like the final puzzle piece clicked into place. This was why it, whatever the hell it is, God, fate, the universe, doesn't matter, saved you. So it could lift the wool from my eyes and say, you can't lose something you've never had. It felt like my whole world was coming down around me, Pete. That was the one thing I thought I did right. I took you in, loved you, gave you shelter, kept you fed. I thought it was the thing I did right, but it was. And that was when I realized, I got you back, but I still lost my son. Because I had no right to call myself your dad when I'd been failing you every step of the way. The door thuds gently, and though he knows he can't, Bucky swears he can feel Peter's warmth through the solid wood, can feel him sitting so close, only a few inches separating them, yet so painfully far away. I didn't know how to make peace with that revelation, kid. I didn't know how to make it okay. I just wanted to get you away from me, so you could finally be safe, truly safe. I felt undeserving of even looking at you. I sure as hell didn't deserve to be loved by you or love you back. He leans harder against the solid door, hopping somehow that Peter can feel him too. But then T'Challa showed up. He can't help but smile, broad and bittersweet. I didn't disappear into the night like I wanted to because I know, kiddo, more than anything, I want this. I want our life together, even if it can't be the way it was. Maybe we can't ever go back to how things were back in Queens, but with T'Challa's help we can still be a family. It's a chance I have to take, Peter. Because more than anything, more than my guilt, more than my fear of fucking it all up, I want to be your dad. He feels another shift, turns around in time to see the door wrench open, and catches only a flash of Peter's tear-soaked face before the boy launches himself into Bucky's arms, clutching him tightly around his neck, sobbing painfully into his chest. "You were always my dad." The force of the hug knocks the wind out of him, but doesn't stop Bucky from gripping Peter desperately tight and cradling him in his arms. He leans against the door jamb, shushing and rocking the boy who shouldn't be as small as he is, holding him like it's the only thing he was made to do. Like despite the lifetime of war and death and grief that says otherwise, he was born to be this boy's father. "It's not your fault," Peter cries, pulling away from their embrace long enough to gasp the words out between his sobs. It wasn't, the eating thing, Dad, that wasn't your fault." Bucky pushes a lock of wet curls out of the boy's tear-stained face. "I should have seen it, Peter. I should have known." "No," Peter says, glaring up at him, beating the heel of his palm against Bucky's chest. "No, just stop, just listen. The eating thing wasn't your fault, Dad. That started a long time ago, way before we even met." Bucky blinks, hardly daring to breathe, but still manages to gasp out, "What?" I had to learn to suppress it a long time ago, when I was bitten." Peter looks up at him, his eyes wet and red-rimmed and dark. He still looks so angry and utterly heartbroken. Bucky runs his metal hand through his hair, soothing him, and watches the boy suck in a much-needed breath. "Remember how I told you that I had to keep my powers a secret from my aunt and uncle?" he asks, and when Bucky nods, he says, "Well, things started off pretty rocky. I was suddenly taller and more muscular and didn't need glasses, and then I was hungry, like all the time, to the point I was literally eating us out of house and home. My aunt and uncle were really worried." He takes a shuddering breath, but relaxes when Bucky places a comforting hand on his shoulder. "They want to take me to a doctor, to get like a full-blown examination done. I was scared shitless of what they'd find and what my aunt and uncle would do if they found out. I didn't want them to be mad, or be burdened more than they already were. So I controlled what I ate, all the time. I was really careful to never eat enough to alarm them. After a while it just became habit, and then the hunger wasn't even really a feeling anymore, if that makes sense. It was always there, I was able to ignore it." He fixes Bucky with that same look again, hurt, betrayed, but fierce, too fierce and determined, and behind that ferocity, fueling it, that well of love. "I wasn't starving myself to stay with you, Dad. I don't know where Mr. Stark got that idea from, but he's wrong. And you always did right by me. Always. From that first night we met when you saved my life to all the times you saved me after that. Don't you dare." The tears start flowing again as Peter grabs him by the collar and shakes him. "Think you were ever anything less than my hero. Because you are. You're my hero, and I." The anger on his face crumbles into despair, and he hangs his head and sobs, I don't want you to go to Wakanda." Bucky yanks him into another hug, his heart in his throat. Peter wasn't hurting himself to keep them together. It feels almost too good to be true, though he still feels like he should have known, the way Tony had, but he feels relief too. Immense, immeasurable relief, siphoning a lifetime's worth of guilt from his body like gasoline. And heartache, too deep to see the bottom of, when he forces himself to say, "I have to go, Pete." "Why?" Peter sobs out. "I don't understand. Why can't Mr. T'Challa help you here?" "Because everything they need to help me is in Wakanda, including his head scientist. And the entire legal defense his lawyers are constructing is based on me being in Wakanda. The prosecution will want proof. I have to go." "Why can't I come with you?" Peter lifts his head, pins him in place with those wide, puppy eyes. "I can homeschool. I can still graduate on time, even if we're overseas. At least we'd be together, please." His heart sinks into his stomach. "I want more than anything for you to be able to come with me, Peter," he says, running his hand through the boy's curls again, "but that would be worse for you than staying here with Tony, trust me." The boy doesn't look convinced, only hurt and impossibly, inconsolably heartbroken. "Why?" Bucky takes a deep breath, holds it, and says, "Because they don't know how to get these trigger words out of my head yet, kiddo. And until they do, they're going to put me back in cryo-freeze." He watches the words sink in, watches the confusion turn to disbelief to rage to sadness, all in one eternally long fraction of a second. Peter's shoulders shake with his sobs, his head bowed, his hands trembling as he wrings the fabric of Bucky's shirt between them. "We could run away," he sobs out, choking on the words. "Like we planned before. We could go somewhere they wouldn't find us, Dad. You don't have to do this." "We could," Bucky agrees gently. He cups the boy's face in his hands and lifts it up so their eyes can meet. "But I don't want you. I don't want either of us to have to choose between having a normal life and being a family, Peter. I want to do it right this time. No more running and hiding." He wipes away the boy's tears with each thumb. "I want to get these words out of my head. I want to step foot on American soil as a free man again, and I want to take you back to New York. I want it all, Pete. An apartment we don't have to constantly fix up by ourselves. You, me, Steve, hell, even Tony. I want it all. Birthdays and holidays and being forced to watch the same 6 Star Wars movies on repeat forever. I want to be there when you graduate high school, when you graduate college, if you get married, if you have kids. I want that. I want us to have that life. He pulls the boy in and presses their foreheads together, holds him, doesn't let him look away from his eyes. I want to adopt you. Peter's wet eyes slip closed, his jaw clenching as he swallows down the sob hammering in his chest. In that moment, Bucky knows he understands. Things have changed. It's no longer enough to run away and hide. If they want to be able to call each other family in the light of day, this is something Bucky has to do. The boy leans in, presses their foreheads firmer together, and whispers, heartbroken but sure, okay. Despite Bucky's insistence, and Peter's begrudging acceptance of the situation, no one is exactly thrilled when T'Challa's plane lands 2 days later. Peter leans into his side as they watch the plane descend, its floats extended in preparation to land on the water. It hardly makes a splash as it makes contact, gliding to an easy stop at the end of the long dock protruding off the back porch. He's here, Peter says, quiet and sad. Bucky hugs him around the shoulders. Yeah, he is. The boy's lower lip trembles. Bucky can tell he's thinking very hard about something. He looks conflicted and unsure of himself. But ultimately he clenches his jaw in that stubborn way he definitely picked up from Steve, stealing his features as best he can, choosing to stay silent. Bucky had expected him to beg him not to go. But Peter somehow always surprises him. Friday slides the back doors open for T'Challa when he approaches. He nods at them as he enters, though he doesn't smile. Bucky figures this must at least partly be bittersweet for him too. Good morning, Bucky, how are you feeling? Bucky hugs his son tighter against him and mulls over his answer. Hopeful. Peter's fist tightens in the back of his shirt. T'Challa nods again. I'm glad to hear it. As am I. He looks up as Tony walks in, looking haggard, like he hasn't slept in days. Bucky wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly the case. Stark. Your Highness, Tony greets. He glances over to the rest of them with no small amount of trepidation on his face. Glad to see we're all keeping it cheery in here. Steve rolls his eyes but doesn't reply. Bucky just holds Peter tighter when the boy leans harder into his side. Okay, well, there goes my best shot, Tony says. He turns back to T'Challa. You guys sticking around for brunch, or is it, a Thundercats Argo type of occasion? The king stares Tony down. I wasn't trying to make a cat pun, for the record. T'Challa snorts. I would prefer not to linger, and something tells me Bucky will feel the same. T'Challa looks up at him, and Bucky nods, feeling Peter wilt beneath his arm. If you are ready, Bucky, I have left the door to the cabin open. I will join you on the dock shortly. The sympathetic look T'Challa gives them turns to something else, something grim and determined, as he looks back to Tony. I must speak with Stark first. Alone. Oh, that doesn't sound good, Tony says, and he and Bucky share a look of confusion. Bucky wants to ask what T'Challa needs to speak with Tony about, but when he looks back at the man, he finds him locked in a stare-off with Steve. Steve doesn't look nearly as calm as T'Challa does. Now Bucky really wants to know what the hell is going on. But Peter's shoulders tremble underneath his arm, and Bucky is pulled out of his curiosity at the sight of silent, grief-stricken tears streaming down the boy's cheeks. It's all right, Pete, he says, a piss-poor attempt at consoling him. The boy merely wipes his face dry, giving him a curt nod in lieu of a verbal reply. Tony approaches awkwardly, looking like he's not quite sure what to do with his hands. I'm getting the impression we're supposed to say our goodbyes here then. Bucky looks up at him. He's not sure what exactly possesses him to lock his free arm around the man's neck and pull him in for a hug, ignoring his startled yelp. Still, he finds himself smiling as he pats the shorter man firmly on the back. Tony looks confused and indignant when he lets him pull away. Bucky just smiles wider, clapping him on the shoulder. Take care of yourself, Tony, he says, watching the other man try and fail to appear emotionless. And take care of my son. You know I will, Tony scoffs. Bucky drops his hand and Tony hesitates a moment before holding his own hand out to shake. I'll take care of him. You'll hate it. You'll only have him back for a day before he's asking to come hang out with me some more. Trust me, it'll sting like a bitch. You'll chase me off with a broom the next time you see me. Bucky laughs and shakes his hand. inexplicably grateful for the unexpected friend he's found in Tony Stark. And Tony starts hesitant. Take care of yourself too. Go get better. I'm not a babysitting service. Go get that brain scrubbed and polished and then get your ass back here. We'll be waiting for you. I'll miss you too, Tony. Yeah, shut up. Get out of my house. Bucky can only grin. He looks down, hoping to find Peter smiling up at them, but the boy's face is pale and his gaze far away. Sighing, Bucky lifts his arm, taking the boy's shoulder in his metal hand instead. Come on, Pete. Come help me load up the plane. Peter wordlessly grabs Bucky's one and only bag and steps through the doors. Bucky waits for Steve, who is still locked in some kind of tense, professional-level staring contest with T'Challa. He pauses in the doorway and calls, "You coming?" Steve reluctantly tears his intense gaze away, his body taut like a bowstring as they step outside. "Good luck, Barnes," Tony calls. He looks distinctly uncomfortable for the level of sincerity in his own voice when Bucky looks back at him through the sliding doors. "Thank you again, Tony," Bucky says, "for everything." The man nods and Bucky turns back to the dock, where Peter is standing at the very edge, dwarfed by the shadow of T'Challa's plane. "You mind telling me what that was all about?" Bucky says to Steve, quiet, so no one else can hear. "I have an idea," Steve answers, clearly still very tense. "I just hope I'm wrong." Bucky regards him thoughtfully. Now is colossally not the time or place, I'm guessing. Steve barks out a humorless laugh. "You have no idea." "Well," Bucky shrugs, nudging the other man with his elbow. "Cheer up, Stevie, it'll work out." "I need your head in the game," he says. Peter does. A guilty sigh leaves the man's lips. "You're right, I'm sorry, I'm just stressed." "I know, it's okay." "I still think this is the right thing," Steve says. "I still think T'Challa is doing us an incredible favor. I'm just stressed about everything." "I think we're all feeling that in varying degrees." He gives the man a look, firm but not unkind. "Stressed is fine, just don't shut down on me. I need you to make sure Tony is sleeping every night and eating something besides organic coffee beans so he can take care of my kid." A wry grin spreads across Steve's handsome face. "I'll watch over them, Buck, I promise." "I love you," Bucky says, before he can worry if that's a weird thing to say, here and now of all places and times. Steve looks at him sharply, startled, mouth agape in shock, but his eyes are a little misty, and he doesn't look uncomfortable despite the breathless look on his face, so Bucky figures it was fine. Probably. When they reach the end of the dock, Steve pulls him into a hug so tight Bucky swears he can hear his bones creak. He buries his face in the other man's neck, breathes in his familiar, comforting scent, and lets the embrace say all the little things he could never find the words for. When they pull away, Steve cradles his face and says, "I'll be waiting for you, Buck." Bucky smiles and kisses him, hand tight on the back of his head, his grip gentle. "I'll see you soon, Stevie," he promises as he pulls away. And turns back to Peter. The boy isn't looking at him. He's staring up at T'Challa's plane, gently wadding in the calm waters. His eyes are wet but his cheeks are dry, and when Bucky steps up beside him, he fully expects the boy to break down and beg him not to get on board. But Peter looks over at him and says, "Have a safe flight, Dad." For a moment, Bucky's heart stops, thinking he's truly hurt Peter beyond repair. For him to say a thing like that, to change so suddenly, from the small child who would cling to him at even the smallest thought of Bucky leaving, to this unfamiliar young man who could say goodbye like it's no big deal. Bucky momentarily drowns in the guilt of thinking how badly he's clearly hurt his son. But then he sees it. He looks closer and he sees how hard Peter's fingers are digging into the material of Bucky's bag, how tightly he's holding his whole body like it might crumble apart at the smallest touch, how defensive his posture is, turned away from Bucky, distant but not disdainful, held back, deliberately, consciously restrained. Peter's lower lip is still trembling, his eyes still glossy with unshed tears, and Bucky sees. He sees how close Peter is to flinging himself into his dad's arms and begging him to stay. How hard Peter is fighting to be mature about this, to keep his head up, to not make this any harder than it needs to be. And God, does it make Bucky want to fucking bawl. Because Peter knows. He knows that neither of them wants this, that Bucky doesn't want to leave him behind, that he doesn't want to get on that plane and watch the thing he loves most in all the world get further and further away. Peter knows this is Bucky's absolute last resort. So he doesn't beg or sob or cling to him desperately, refusing to let him leave like a child. Even though he clearly wants to. Ironically, it's Bucky who clutches Peter to him and almost confesses that he can't do it, he can't. he can't let him go. But Peter's trying. He's trying to be grown up and let Bucky do the right thing. So Bucky kisses his cheek, cradles his face and says, "I love you more than you will ever know, kid." He tries and fails to keep the tears in but still manages to smile, pressing their foreheads together. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Wait for me, Peter. I swear I will come home to you as soon as I can." "I love you too, Dad," Peter says, his voice unwavering, which is clearly a struggle. His legs are shaking. His hands, when they come up to gently hold Bucky's wrists, are pale and cold. I'll be waiting, so don't forget your promise." He closes his eyes and bumps their foreheads together. I'm really grateful to you for being my dad." "That's good, kiddo, 'cause I'm planning to be your dad forever." Peter opens his eyes and smiles. Bucky smiles back, holds his son a moment longer, and lets him go. And an explosive blast tears through the serene quiet of the woods. The three of them startle and look back toward the house, stunned at the sight of smoke billowing from the roof. Steve instantly moves to check it out, but pauses when Iron Man jets into the sky, not pausing or even turning to look at them as he blasts over the horizon and out of sight. "What the hell?" Bucky says. Steve doesn't answer, just stares, dumbstruck, as T'Challa steps through the doors. He looks impassive, if a little tired, and not panicked or concerned in the slightest. "What was that about?" Bucky asks when the man reaches them. Steve still hasn't said a word, his gaze shifting between the back of T'Challa's head and the plume of smoking still rising from the house. "Something that was a long time coming," T'Challa says, his voice giving absolutely nothing away. "It would be best not to dwell on it for the moment. What's done is done." "Is Mr. Stark okay?" Peter asks. "Is the house on fire?" Bucky adds. T'Challa gently takes his shoulder, using what Bucky can only describe as his king voice as he says, "We have to be going, my friend. Captain Rogers can handle things here." Bucky looks over at Steve, who seems to snap out of whatever internal spiral he was lost in, worry practically rolling off of him in waves. "Steve." Taking a deep breath, Steve forces a smile onto his face, walks over and takes Bucky's hands in his own. "Go, Buck," he says gently, "I've got this." "Okay," Bucky says, unconvinced, "if you're sure." "I'm sure." Bucky looks down at his son, staring at nothing with that faraway look in his eyes, and thinks to himself, "I wish I could say the same." T'Challa's hand drops from his shoulder. It's time to go. Bucky kisses Steve one last time, leans down and presses his forehead to his son, stands and promises them both, "I'll be back, I promise," and steps aboard the plane. He takes his seat, waving to the man he loves and the son he would kill and die for standing together on the dock, and watches as the plane starts to move, faster and faster, until it breaks away from the water and into the clear mountain air. Then he looks down at the dock and succumbs to a fit of sobs when he sees Peter, collapse to his knees, crying desperately with Steve's arms wrapped around him. "Oh God," he thinks, blind with panic, "I'm sorry, Peter. I'm sorry, I'm so fucking sorry." T'Challa, as gracious as ever, bestows some privacy on him by returning to the cockpit. Bucky manages to keep his breakdown mostly silent as he curls up against the window, crying fitfully, praying against all logic that his son can feel, can know, how badly Bucky wishes it didn't have to come to this. His shuddering breaths are interrupted by a gentle, comforting beep. Beside him, his backpack wiggles, and Bucky knows that familiar binary sound, unsurprised when he unzips the bag and finds Orby peering up at him. He manages a huff of laughter and takes the robot into his hands. "Hey, buddy." Orby chirps happily. Bucky's fingers trace its outer shell where only days ago he had crushed and mangled the robot's body almost beyond recognition. There's no sign of any of that damage now. The robot looks good as new. It even seems to have forgiven Bucky, as if the whole thing never happened. Nobody to remember the horror and grief and guilt of that moment except Bucky himself. How familiar a thing that is. "I know this is the right thing," he confesses, confiding in Orby's big black eyes that always remind him of his son. "I know it is, but God, that doesn't make it easy." He sobs again, curling over the robot in his lap, crying helplessly. "I want to see him, I want to see my kid. God, Steve, I don't know if I can do this. I want to see my kid." After a moment, Orby lets out a quiet, affirmative beep. Bucky looks up when he feels its metal body shift. He watches the curved plates move and change, revealing the little black screen hidden below its shell. Orby's ear speakers rotate to project up at him, and the screen lifts so it's easier to see, and after a moment, a video starts to play. A video of Peter. He's down in Tony's workshop, sitting across the table from Tony himself. Bucky assumes it was Friday who recorded the footage. judging by the bird's-eye view of the two sitting across from each other. He wonders, for a moment, if this video was something Peter saved onto Orby's hard drive, or if Orby accessed Friday's archives to stream it to him directly. That train of thought ends when Tony speaks up. "This is a safe space, Pete. Don't be scared. You can tell me if you need help. That's why I'm here." Peter looks nervous as hell, and Bucky recognizes the scene all of a sudden. The day Tony gave Peter his new Spider-Man suit, when Bucky had barged in on them. The day Tony begrudgingly called Bucky Peter's parent for the first time. This footage, he realizes with a slap of surprise, is what must have taken place before he barged in. He leans closer to the screen and listens. "Mr. Stark," Peter says quietly, "please don't take this the wrong way, but you're sort of the last person I'm going to feel safe around right now." Tony hides his surprise much better than Bucky. "Why is that, Peter?" Peter's arms tighten where they're crossed over his chest. "Because you're trying to take my dad away from me." "Okay, I hear you, but you have to understand, kid, that guy out there. He's not the friendly drifter you think he is. I get that you two have bonded, but he's not your dad. He's trouble with a capital T. He's probably the most dangerous person you'll ever meet, even if you continue being Spider-Man." "You're wrong." Tony leans back in his chair, nothing but confident. "Enlighten me." Peter exhales and runs a hand through his unruly hair. Bucky's thumb gently traces the movement, wishing he could do the same. "I know about his past," Peter says softly. "I know why you're so worried about letting me stay with him. But he's not dangerous, Mr. Stark, not to me. I can't really explain it, but I know he would never hurt me." Tony sighs and rubs the back of his head. "Kid." "Just listen," Peter pleads. "You said I could talk, so please, Mr. Stark, just listen." Tony holds his hands up in surrender. "You've got the floor, kid. I'm listening." Peter says, frowning, trying to formulate the words. He looks up past Tony, to that distant, faraway spot he always focuses on when he's overthinking something. "Mr. Stark," he says, very quiet, "do you know what it feels like to be alone?" Tony doesn't reply, though he gestures for Peter to continue after a long, silent moment. "I don't mean like lonely or friendless or single," Peter says. "I mean alone. Do you know what that's like? To know that in the whole world at any given time, not a single person is thinking of you." Tony's face falls. "After my aunt and uncle died and the foster system gave up on me, there was a time when I was alone. And when I knew that it didn't matter. It didn't matter if I lived or died. Nobody would know either way. If I just vanished one day out of thin air, nobody would know I was ever there at all. I was invisible. I had literally nothing." Bucky's heart lodges in his throat. He has never heard Peter sound like this. This crushing, inescapable hopelessness. "I had nothing, Mr. Stark. Not even the comfort of knowing someone somewhere was thinking of me. I didn't even take up space in other people's minds. I had no reason to. I had no reason to be alive. I wasn't suicidal. I just had nothing. I had no one. I was clinging to my schoolwork and my dream of being Spider-Man because I didn't have anything else to attach to, not even a home to feel safe in." He expects the boy to cry at admitting something so painful, so clearly traumatic, but Peter's voice, though quiet, is even and calm, detached. His eyes are distant but dry. He's holding himself protectively, but he's loose. He looks wrong. It's all wrong. This isn't the boy he knows. "The night I met Bucky," Peter says, "I had been wandering the streets aimlessly for hours. I wasn't looking for trouble, I wanted someone to see me. I wanted someone to look at me. I wanted someone to talk to me and think of me, even if they didn't really care, it didn't matter. I just wanted to know I existed to someone else. That if I died without warning like my parents and my aunt and uncle, that anyone would be aware of it." Bucky thinks back to the boy he met that night. The hopeful, cheerful, bubbly sound of Peter's timid voice. How eager he had been to follow Bucky home. How lively he seemed to be for a kid who almost just got shot in the face. How Bucky had slammed the door on him without a single word. What did Peter feel in that moment, when the only person to have acknowledged him in weeks pushed him away so vehemently? He's scared to find out, but in spite of himself, Bucky continues watching. "I ran into a guy who had been mugged, and I chased the muggers down this alleyway, trying to get his wallet back for him. But something was off. Normally I can, sense danger. I have a sixth sense that tells me when there's trouble, like a built-in warning system. But when I was fighting these guys, Mr. Stark, it was silent. It was dead silent." Bucky's entire body goes cold. "You know," Peter says, smiling, but now there are tears soaking his face. "For a second, I thought I was already dead. Like even my own senses didn't know I was there. That I mattered so little. My own body didn't think it was worth the effort of keeping me alive." How could you ever think that? Bucky whispers, dampening Orby's screen with his own falling tears. One of the muggers pulled a gun on me and I froze because I was certain, really, Mr. Stark, I was positive that this was it. This was exactly what I'd been scared of, and it was inevitable now. I just shut down. I didn't even have regrets really in that split second. I just froze. I wanted it over with. I was so tired of being alone. Peter, Tony tries to say, but the boy shakes his head. He isn't done. And Bucky is terrified to hear what he has to say next, but he needs to. He has to know. Mr. Stark, Peter says, wiping his wet face, have you ever had someone tell you to listen to your gut? Like, if someone gives you a bad feeling, you should listen to it, even if it doesn't seem to really make sense. Bucky can hear the confusion in Tony's voice as he answers, yeah. Peter smiles, hugs himself tighter. The guy had a gun in my face and he pulled the trigger. I really thought I was already dead, but suddenly there was this guy, in front of me. He came out of nowhere and I didn't hear or feel him approach us. It was like he materialized just to save my life. The boy sobs, but he's grinning. He's grinning that familiar sunshine grin, and Bucky loves him with every fiber of his being, loves him more than words could possibly express. And when I looked at him, I just knew, Mr. Stark. It was that gut feeling, only instead of warning me to stay away, it was screaming, you're safe now. It was the opposite of my spider sense. Instead of danger, all my senses were telling me that I was going to be okay. Finally, after months of searching, someone found me. Someone saw me and he helped me. The boy wipes his face, his smile fading into a more serious look. I don't care what anyone else says about him. I felt good about Bucky the first moment I saw him. He doesn't care if T'Challa can hear the guttural sob that rips its way from his throat. He couldn't keep it in if he gave it everything he had. I know what Hydra made him do, Peter says. I know some of their conditioning is still affecting him, and I know what he's capable of, but none of that changes what he is to me, Mr. Stark. Bucky took me in, he saved me. He took care of me and he listened to the things I had to say. He looked for me when I was late coming home. He scolded me when I was reckless. He worried about me. He wanted me. And he became my dad when I needed that from him. I really don't care if you and the rest of the world think he's dangerous, because being around Bucky is really the only time I ever feel safe. And Bucky had left him. Just got on a plane and left him on that fucking dock. There's more to the video, Tony surrendering, cheering Peter up, presenting him with his new state-of-the-art suit, but Bucky isn't watching anymore. The screen goes black a few moments later, and Bucky's confronted by the sight of his own face, drenched in tears. He watches helplessly as Orby reforms itself, the screen covered once again by its outer shell, its eyes and ears sliding back into place, good as new. The robot gives him a small, hopeful beep and Bucky sobs, and holds it to his chest in a tight hug, cradling it, biting back the urge to scream. Thank you, he sobs out, though the guilt is heavy enough to crush him so badly, he feels like he might never stand up again. Wait for me, Peter. I'm going to come home to you, I swear I will. He wonders if Peter still believes in his promises, after he broke the only one that ever mattered. And yet Peter had never held that against him. He hadn't once accused Bucky of going back on his word, or thrown his words back in his face. No, in the end, he hadn't even asked Bucky to stay, though Bucky could tell he was dying to. He just held his tongue and told him to have a safe flight, as he stood there and watched his whole life get on a plane and leave him. He thinks of that last sight of Peter, collapsed at the end of the dock, and bites the back of his fist to stop himself from screaming. I'm sorry, Peter, I'm so fucking sorry. The guilt eats at him, but there's more too. Beneath the guilt, the self-loathing, the grief, there's stubborn, bullheaded, foolhardy determination. Bucky lets Orby encase his metal hand and clenches his fist, jaw tightening as he wills away the tears. I'll come back to you as soon as I can, he vows, head tipped against the plane window. I promise. He doesn't get a chance to see much of Wakanda, though truth be told, he wasn't expecting to see any of it at first. After brief introductions with T'Challa's head scientist, his sister, who reminds Bucky way too much of Tony, he's led to his new cryo-freeze chamber, prepped and briefed on what to expect. T'Challa stands with him as he's helped inside the container. I will be waiting for you when you wake up, he assures, and Bucky smiles at him through the glass window of the door. Commence freezing in 5, 4, 3. Bucky takes a deep breath. 2. Holds it. 1. And lets it go.